You have the mercenary groups like Wagner with Yevgeny Prigozhin looking over Putin's shoulder, getting ever more powerful, making more money out of this war. And that also is a kind of a threat for Putin too, people other than him with getting more power.
All right, Nick, thank you very much. Live from Kramatorsk. Out front now, Boris Bondarev. He was a Russian diplomat for 20 years and resigned in protest over Putin's war in Ukraine. And Boris, I appreciate your time tonight. One person we've spoken a lot about on the show who appears to be close to Putin now, seems to want to run this war in a much bigger way is Evgeny Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group paramilitary organization. Do you think Prigozhin could take over? What is his role with Putin?
Well, it's a very interesting moment in all this campaign that Mr. Prigozhin has become so influential and really a person which can decide a lot of, can make a lot of decisions. So I think he is somehow a favorite of Vladimir Putin for now. And Vladimir Putin obviously entrusts him with the most difficult and challenging missions on the front line, because Mr. Prigozhin controls these private military company like Wagner, is called Wagner, and they are notorious for being the most effective and most cruel of all Russian armed structures which are acting now in Ukraine. But I believe that Mr. Prigozhin has no political future in Russia because he has no social basis and he has no allies within the Russian establishment, because all of Russian establishment, decision makers such as army generals or special service people, they hate him and despise him as a former criminal and someone who has no connections, who has jumped up man or something. So I would not overestimate his significance for now.
Do you read anything into this, though? You don't want to overestimate his significance, but does his rise and the fact that you say so many in power despise him, what does this mean about Putin? That Putin seems to be letting him in more? Is it a sign of Putin's isolation? Is it a sign others are turning against Putin? How do you see it?
Well, I would like to see it as the sign of a further isolation of Putin, of course, and his frustration that Putin is obviously disappointed in his army, his generals, which cannot still bring him a victory over Ukraine, which they had promised to him, obviously, before the war started. And of course, he now thinks that maybe Prigozhin, with his, unscrupulous methods of war, can have some victories. Who knows? But of course, any of this will lead to further destabilization within the Russian elite. It is obvious, one way or another. Either Putin will be more dependent on Prigozhin and his like, or he will stay more dependent on army generals and on FSB generals, for instance. And those two groups will be in constant fight with each other. Maybe Mr. Putin is counting on this. So they fighting each other, and he can still be above this fight. But for how long, I don't know.
At one point in your career, you worked for the Foreign Ministry's Department for Non-Proliferation and Arms Control, and that was obviously related to weapons of mass destruction. The latest we have from U.S. intelligence is that senior Russian military officials have discussed specifics, how, under what conditions, to use a tactical nuclear weapon in Ukraine. Do you think the possibility of this is increasing at all?
I believe that there is still a possibility of using nuclear weapons on the Russian side, of course, because, of course, every general wants to use whatever means he has in order to gain victory, and Russian generals are no exceptions. And, of course, they see that they have no prospects of winning this war, or even, to have a kind of acceptable stalemate for Russia. And of course, I think they naturally they discussing the scenarios of how they could deploy nuclear weapons. But I don't think, and well, I think even to me as a non-specialist, non-expert in military affairs, strictly military affairs, it is obvious that even if they use new tactical nuclear weapons, it will not change the course of the war, because it will have very limited military gains, and it will have a devastating political consequences for Russia.
All right, Boris, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.